Hey, I'm Pepper Rodgers, here with a lesson on bass line basics. You know, strumming is a powerful rhythm technique on guitar, but it's easy to overdo. Bashing away on the strings all the time can sound heavy and overbearing. One of the best ways to add variety to your guitar parts is by using bass lines in conjunction with chords. Bass lines do more than just give a welcome break from strumming. They add movement and can keep things interesting even when the chords aren't changing much. Just as a bass player does in a band, a bass line played on the guitar connects the song's rhythmic pulse with its chord progression. In this lesson, we'll look at some simple ways to incorporate bass lines into your rhythm parts. We'll be working with common chords, mostly down in open position, and we'll string them together in some patterns with strumming and moving bass lines. So let's get started. The first step in developing bass lines is just to identify the key bass notes of your chords. A basic chord consists of three notes: the root, the third, and the fifth. And any of these can serve as a bass note. So first, let's just look at what these bass notes are for C, G, D, A, E, and F chords. Here's a C chord, and the root, the fifth, and the third. And a G with the root, the fifth, and the third. Here's a D, and the root, the fifth, and the third. Here's an A, here's the root, the fifth, and the third. And an E with the root, the fifth, and the third. And an F with the root, the fifth, and the third. The most important of these three potential bass notes is the root. That's the note on which the chord is built, and it also gives it its name. So the root of a G chord is a G note, and the root of a C chord is the C note, etc. Playing the root of a chord in a bass line can be enough to establish the chord just by itself. Here's an example, like a little progression that goes from G to C to D, and it's in 3/4 time, and in each case I'm going to play the root bass note and then strum the chord like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. After the root, the next most important bass note is the fifth. Lots of bass lines just alternate between the root and the fifth. That's what's happening in this next example. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also use thirds as bass notes, along with roots and fifths. As a bass note, the third sounds less resolved than either the root or the fifth. Here's an example that uses all three bass notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. In any sort of pattern, the rule of thumb is to play the root bass note on the first beat of any chord change to establish the change in the harmony, and also to wind up on the root at the end of the progression for a feeling of resolution. Here's an A minor with the bass notes, the root, the fifth, and the third. E minor, the root, fifth, and the third. D minor, the root, the fifth, and the third. B minor, the root, the fifth, and the third. An F sharp minor with the root, the fifth, and the third.